talking about is the title, the Payroll uh, Digital Ghost. It's about a class of insider threat uh, where the attacker doesn't bring, they just get hired. They showed on your payroll, on your email with a badge, and then often get a job to do. Joining the meeting and taking a lunch with you and etc. On the virtual. So just one quick time here. So this independent security research, everything which is built in, which has been shown here in the slide, is synthetic, anonymized, and in a tested environment. Uh, so let's move to the slide next. Cool. Bit about who I am. So I'm a security researcher working for Microsoft from last and having an experience of last 7 years. Moreover, core into the detection engineering, doing threat hunting, tracking the APT groups, and recently you've seen the published article on the Microsoft that was a Node.js related threat actor uh, who's been there. But the insider threat have been taken my brain in quite a back periods where uh, hunting on the inside threat is like uh, seeing the logins which are very legit. There is no security alerts and no anomalous behavior most probably when you check from the same side or the sock side. But when you go or dive deeper, you will see there is an insider threat uh, probably lurking around in the organization in case of there is one. So let's take more deeper understanding into this ghost worker. Moving to the slide 3. Cool. The shift. So a quick word where this means quick word where this shift comes from is like remote work unlocked global threat, global talents, and that also includes the global threat crisis, right? The flip side is the new attack surface, right? In some observed cases where the adversaries have obtained employment through the fraudulent or synthetic identities. Think about what that means is they arrive with valid credentials, the work expected hours, adjust for whatever the time zone they are pretending to be in. They often do the real work, which has been asked by the manager or the project program manager, etc. Like, and what the traditional controls, and this is where the traditional control fails off. The person is doing the real work, is joining on the time zone which is expected to join, right? He's ensuring there is no malware in his system and no obvious break-in, or he's doing some kind of behavioral pattern where he will get flagged on. So they are being super conscious. So no impossible login at 3 a.m. just looks like a normal employee. So, and that's what I mean by the ghost worker. Someone who uses stolen or synthetic identities uh, to land on a remote role. They operate from a concealed or high risk location. A reason is uh, like they to shift to this uh, VPNs and then infrastructure of the network, etc. So it pretty much cost us them. So they work from the highly concealed locations, which is bit easy for them to is it from them to tune in and something like that. So here's the route. For the next 40 minutes, what we're gonna do is first we'll understand the what is the threat here, then who these actors are and why they target, who they target, then the framework which I have designed to track on, how we go looking for them, and then the evidence from the 3 case studies which I have tested in the synthetic environment, of course, defined to particular that tested environment. So the numbers and numbers, and the behavioral pattern may get varies depending on to the testing of that particular queries onto that particular environment. And then the final defense, and where this goes next, right? So moving to the next slide. 1 second, loading up. Yeah, the anatomy of a ghost worker. So let's build this profile. The six traits shows up again and again. One, a fabricated identity, stolen or synthetic, with the plausible work history. The two, a second, two, like an social engineering, social engineered hire, where they are exploiting the hiring chain, where the urgency of the hiring recruiters, and then the pressure to fill the technical role fast, as soon as fast, because the competitor may not take that employee, kind of. And why I'm saying this, computer may not take that particular employee or the user, or a particular user, is because we're going to take that into the next slide. We're going to talk more about that on the next slide, why I'm talking about that part. And then the third is the infrastructure masking, residential VPNs and proxies that hides where they actually are. Fourth, sustained access. This isn't a smash and grab, like it's long-term foothold, because they wanted to stay in that organization for a pretty much long time, depending on to the objective. And then there is an parallel employment, right? Where one person may be running many identities across different organizations at the same time. Means that person is joining uh, two different companies or three different companies at the same time, in somewhere around collaborative time frame, and showing up on the meetings and etc. So that is a parallel employee has been doing. And then the last one is like an uh, sustainability, like the uncomfortable one. They are often genuinely component, they do the real work, and which means your behavioral analytics, like a UEBA, CASP, or a SIM, right? In case if they don't have a means strong or aligned detection to that point of threat, it may not get triggered, right? I'm excluding the generic rules like unfamiliar signing and suspicious signing, and etc. like that. So we are looking for a mismatch uh, between the identity and the infrastructure behind it. So let's move to the next slide. That is slide 5. So when I said that the competitor in the last slide, that the competitor don't want to lose that candidate, etc., is because of these roles: AI/ML engineer, cloud architect, a security engineer, DevOps engineer. Why these roles? These reasons, and they compound. The team's talented, staffed, right? So they want the company always want a talented candidate to get in and fix their work, and work around with them, etc. So so the verification part and everything gets relaxed, because they wanted that person to get hired as soon as possible, sign off and sign in and etc. And the salaries are high, so the payoff is a big, and then roles unlock sensitive IPs system. It's near like ideal cover, right? A caveat of these numbers, they are just illustrative from the 2025 labor graph, which I just got, and the public remark, but directional, they are stark. AIML engineering, and uh, in the low mind, six figures, then projected growth around the 40% of the 40% of their growth in next 2020, by 2023 2020, 30, and etc. So when this demand outstrip the supply, 3 to 1 concerns get cut in hiring, and fraudulent applicants with a clean looking resume walks right through the gap, and and the uh, and the financial motive doesn't stop at the salary part. Uh, there is IP theft or maybe data exfiltration for the resale, or using or use that access to get the foothold or sell that particular access clean access environment created uh, by the user with some kind of with some kind of uh, um, masked persistence payload or some kind of script when the objective is to sell this particular organization to someone another third actor for the breach or etc for the motive purpose. So that is undefined, depends on the objective of the objective of the insider threat, as a we call it as a ghost worker. Now, moving to this next slide, slide 6, life cycle. From identity to insider, so this four phase is something where this chain those threads together create one phase of life cycle for this ghost worker as insider threat. Phase one, there's identity procurement, stolen, synthetic or bought from the broker with an history that looks very favorable, where the background is not gonna stuck and the user is skilled, employees have a track of history, etc. Then it comes phase two, that is the target selection. So high demand roles, which we talked earlier in the last slide, where the verification is relaxed, salary is good, project is good, and then the this AIML roles and then security researcher or cloud architect have a good, the permissions, or already they have quite a permissions on their system, and as a privilege escalation they don't need to do by adding the some kind of tools to get the privilege escalation out. So they pretty much they have their that all kind of things in their bucket by default by getting into the organization legitimately. Then it comes the phase three, the infrastructure setup. Residential VPNs, pools, a consistent device fingerprint, time zone alignment for their hours, uh, look right. In phase four, sustained access. They get hired. They often do the real work while they are doing it, and infrastructure is quite leaves the stresses. Now we are talking here about two different things. That is infrastructure and an identity. So identity they can change, they can fabricate, they can they can change it like they change the clothes, right? But the infrastructure they cannot change it. Reason is, so we're gonna talk a bit more about that in the next coming slide, right? But the cost and the convenience of setting up their complete infrastructure, because they need to they specifically they do the job in 2 to 3 organizations and at the same time, so they need sustainable infrastructure where they have created a playbook or something like that, so which will keep the logins and sessions and everything consistent without losing the grip, right? So so now moving to the next slide, that is where we are lacking around, like a detection gap, right? Right, the blind spot, that is a detection gap which we are going to talk. So right now when we say that uh, tools like ueba, dlp, casb, im, sso, what, so their workaround means uh, they see the valid credentials in case if the mfa is lost, mfa multiple mfa fatigue happens and etc, so they get triggered for it, right? Unfamiliar sign in, suspicious sign in, even if the VPN get changed, even the location get quite a change from distance and around, it's gonna flag it around. So this creates, or this becomes generic signals eventually for the SOC team and SIEM. So probably they get the severity of an low or informational kind of, right? So that, and so this tool see the valid credentials, clean MFA. They see the normal working hours, adjusted consent from the time zone, the real work and legitimate data access, etc. Now, when we look at now what they may what they may not surface or identity fraud, like an that doesn't happen before, and these tools cannot check on that. That is this the fabricated identity? Was is there any kind of parallel employment kind of happening here, and the parallel infrastructure is being shared for the different organization, etc. So that is something which cannot be means seen, and until unless we do not have the again the cross-tenant telemetry kind of, which most of the organization do not have it, because they put on their own means uh, taking on their own telemetry kind of, and do not having an excessive telemetry and logs to do the research and do the hunting across the different telemetries and etc. So that creates like a gap between the uh, detection for the ghost workers specifically. Now, moving to the next slide, the core insight. So when I said earlier, the identity rotates, identities can be changed, but infrastructure cannot be changed continuously because that needs to be sustained, right? So if you take one idea away from the talk, make it this one as identities rotates faster than the infrastructure. A ghost worker will happily burn identities and VPN exit nodes to stay ahead of the detection, but their physical infrastructure uh, will be there even they move from one organization to different organization for in terms of getting hired, right? So the network stays, and and that's not changing because that cost real money and efforts, right? And the persistence creates a forensic anchor signal that can survive across time, and in some cases across organization, which I said, which we talked. So the whole strategy flips here. Instead of chasing the identity, which is cheap from them to change, we anchor their infrastructure. We pivot their infrastructure, which is expensive for them to change, and identities, exit nodes, and exit node sessions. This those rotations, ISPs, devices, and hardwares which cannot be changed frequently. So I will caveat it in that way. The slide does this, and which we were gonna get and bit more understanding on how we're gonna track and pivot the infrastructure rather than hunting for the identities. Moving to the next slide. I'm sorry. The three-layer framework here. So the first is the ISP infrastructure, and then the second layer is more on the token and device, which comes specifically more on the hardware side, and the third one is HR validation and velocity kind of. So we'll go more deeper into that part. So layer one looks at ISP and IP infrastructure, shared hubs, and IP chunks. Layer two looks at the tokens and device artifacts and how tokens get minted, get frequently changed, and what devices are involved. Are they compliant, or they are not, right? Then the layer 3 adds behavioral velocity and importantly a human validation step with HR, because I cannot ping HR for hundreds of user validation to them, like check this one, check this out, if these are the ghost work or these are the insiders, something like that. They're gonna kill me for that, right? So the keyword is progressive here. Each layer feeds the next one, and each layer, so what I'm saying is each layer feeds the next one, right? So what I'm talking about is here is uh, in the in the coming slides, when we start hunting around on this on the from layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3, every users coming getting we got from the layer 1 like ISP, IP, which that will be fed to the layer 2 side, and then layer 2 to layer 3, and this is creator, and this is what we're gonna check into the next slide. So the outcome of this layers is that it isolates the accounts with unstable uh, uh, means unstable and unshared infrastructures. Moving to the next slide, getting loaded. Right, the layer 1, the infrastructure analysis. The move here is to look for the past browser fingerprints and look at the infrastructure level behavior, suspicious accounts, often clusters on shared ISP hubs. The shared ISP hub, or they chance through a lot of IPs because of the VPN proxy usage or issues kind of. So the three indicators here: the first ISP concentration, one ISP the serving three or more than uh, serving more than so one ISP is serving more than three users. Like I said, at the same time frame, at the same time window, this one ISP is being aligned to three different users. So that is that is what the ISP concentration I'm talking, right? And then we talk about this that is multi-user ISP day. It means the single ISP is supporting multiple uh, multiple users, like in two strangers who also happens to work at at that company, right? The that same sharing, but at the same day, which is points to a shared gateway, right? The third elevated is a distinct IPs, an account cycling through five or more than IPs in a short active window. So we are clustering. First, we clustered ISP. The second, we clustered the a single ISP supporting multiple users at the same day, because they are having kind of like a shared gateway. And then the third, we have taken that five distinct one in the short active window which are active in a continuous way. So the outcome of this is the layer that is it isolates the account unstable shared infrastructure pattern that are uncommon among typical remote workers. Then will flag these indicators uh, to the right threshold at particular environment. So again, you need to set up that threshold, that how many you need to target. Like let's always take like in four or five distinct one which we have taken in this part. So we are isolating that particular accounts and the ISPs and users. Taking this to the layer 2 now, right? The token and device artifact, right? So here on the on the layer 2, this identity artifact, specifically tokens and device, this extends the normal session monitoring to the go deeper, because now we are moving to the hardware side here. So the three things we look for, that is the auth token minting anomalies. Tok- which what that means is the token events that runs above the baseline for that particular legitimate user. The token burst, right? The token burst are three or more token events inside a 2 minutes of time frame. Let's take it as because 1 minute is pretty much common, so we're gonna take it as a 2 minutes here. So uh, in the 2 minutes of time frame window, which is very machine-like pattern and repeated signing happening from unmanaged or compliant devices. So that is a token. That is what we are checking. Why does this matters is because a simple is the refresh token older, or is the session which is very long, right? And these checks can miss all of it. Rapid scripted token minting from a device from a managed stack doesn't recognize a signal, uh, which is like an automated authentication happening by the script, or or like an some kind of backend infrastructure created for it. not like a normal user being refreshing again and again for the particular sessions. Right. And this creates and add on to that, that is unauthorized device. It could be BYOD device as well, or an uncompliant device which is hiding behind that session to look valid. and and that's the difference between checking the front door and watching how the keys are actually being made. Moving to the next slide. Right now, this all means layer one, layer two, and layer three could be like an means different points which we are understanding. But when we the step by step, when we move to the next slides, you can connect the dots between layer one, layer two, and layer three. Right now, it is like, and we're just understanding the what exactly this layer one is, layer two, and layer three is, right? So going to layer three side, that is a behavioral and velocity and HR validation. So layer three does two things specifically. First is it expands the old impossible travel idea beyond the geography. It's not just uh, like you were in two cities and hours apart. It's a token issuance burst and the infrastructure shift that don't match the location, the person that claims to be like uh, like that. But the second part is the one I want to get remembered or to get focused. That is where this technical work meets that the organization validation, right? Where the HR will once we get the uh, some set of ISPs or users and then ISPs and all, we can validate that to the HR validation. Because as I said earlier, that we cannot get hundreds of uh, users to the HR saying that uh, just validate this for the uh, uh, employment status and check if this have a background verification done and etc like that. So we're not going to do that so directly from the level one side, right? So that is the reason this layer one, layer two, and layer three comes around into the stage. Now moving to the next slide. Right. So illustrative threshold we used here. So like an from one of the from all this infrastructure for the three cases which we have used this particular threshold. That's what we're going to talk about. That is ISP user count, which I talked about in the first layer. That is a uh, the same ISP should be same for the particular more than three users. That is shared infrastructure indicator, which you call. The second is an ISP, which is more than 10. The more than 10 IPs is 10 IPs serving that particular ISP. And then that comes the account IP churn, which is in the very short time frame. The more than 5 IPs are being uh, uh, rotating. And then the active days, which is a persistence indicator, that is a more than 3 days, and the token bus, that is between the 2 minutes or more than like in 3 minutes, or 0.3 minutes. So that is like an automated script which is running at the back end for the authentication side and etc. The one thing to underline here, that is they're not fixed rules here. The threshold effectiveness depends on heavily on the organizations where this rules and these queries are being tested upon. So the context can be varied. You need to change the threshold from 3 users to 10, 3 users to 10, or 4 or 5, something like that. So this is like in trial and error method until and unless you get a visibility around that how many identities could be possibly, we can check around between that 2 to 3 minutes of time frame. So moving to the next slide. All right. So this is where which we're talking about. Like as I said, that all these three layers will come into one point where we will be analyzing that particular time frame. So on the case study one, where a mid-scale environment, right, started at 242 users. Sorry, 242 users and narrowed to three suspected accounts, right? The case study two, large scale, started at a 1702 users and narrowed to 15 flagged, and nine after a stricter filter, because that was a because it were more than 15. So I thought of adding one more query to make it, and it gave us a 9. And then the third one, that is a mid to large with 96 users down to the 5 through a 8 stage pipeline, which we're going to talk about in the next part. Across the three, the roughly 95 to 99% reduction in the investigation scope in this test one. So now we cannot take this 242 users who are logging from this suspected locations to the HR for the checking, right? But we can take 5 user, 15 user, 10 users to the HR for the background verification checks and etc. for this. So that is where we're gonna scale to the next progressive filtering. All right. So the next is the progressive filtering, which is a funnel we're gonna talk, and this is overall the illustrative of three tested, means the environments, and we're gonna check accordingly to that. China, Russia. Cool. So when we talk about the illustrative of this, the geo IP, I'm sorry. So what it comes down to this, how this 96 users and 58 ISPs, 45,539 IPs, which were seen from that particular two locations in the last 30 days, which is pretty much like an impossible for the analyst or threat hunters to uh, check upon and pivot down to the 15 or 5 users, right? So for the Geo and ISP surface, there was 96 users, and then this is a hello, I'm audible. Or cool. So how it comes around from the 96 user, like applying the IP churn, what we talked about earlier on the layer one, it trims to 86 users, and later on when we apply the volume based trimming, like an token bursting, token minting, and all, it taken down that to the 23 users, from 96 to 23 users. So now we can see that how it started, like from Geo and ISP we got 96 users. We checked for the distant IPs, like an IP churning, we got the 86 users. Then the volume based streaming, like an token minting and token burst and all, it moved to 23 users. Later on to the device posture analysis, like an, is the device compliant? How what is the time window for this device? How the active this device is? It turned down to the 15 users. Later on, moving to the Moving to the token minting and then token burst, it turned down to the 7. And then the final shortlist we got, that was 5 users. So this is where the progressive filtering we taken into the all 8 sets of pipeline queries which we created. Every query, every framework have 2 to 3 queries which turn down, taking all these users and IPs to the next query, and then it uh, churning 96 users to the 5 shortlist users. So the 94 point, like in the scope, if you see the, it's like 98% of the noise we have cancelled it around with this progressive filtering. Moving to the next slide, validation part, and that is where now talking about the HR is where we can validate with the human at the back end with the help of the framework. So in this all reviewed case, the highest risk account had incomplete or pending background verifications. In those cases, accounts were actioned in response to identify the risk signals, and where it was reported at the back, early action helped, and that helped us getting that this were the flagged one. On the false positive side, observe on the false positive, we did observe means uh, were limited were the limited accounts who have actual, the travel for that particular time frame, which created the login issues and etc., which created bit of false positive on the region where the someone where the user were using the personal VPN for the privacy and on and all. So moving to the next slide, that is adversarial wave, like an evasion versus a countermeasure, right? So how might they have evaded, or and how this framework have answered us? So uh, the stillman, the attacker, if I were trying to beat if I'm trying to beat this, how would I evade it, right? So I will say up like an in front of this is observed versus like a theorist, right? So not on a like an exhaustive playbook. So two moves here. That is a diverse infrastructure, right? Rotate VPNs, user residential proxy network, sign up fresh, cloud desktop per session, then token minting and behavioral mimicry. Cap your tokens, which we don't do it, which we don't do it excessively by refreshing it, right? So we don't burst at refresh tokens, and use of managed or uncompromised device and the steady IPs. So we don't look like a churn for that. So here is the approach what that answers back where data sharing is permitted, right? The cross correlation still catches one actor is showing up across multiple chain of events in multiple framework layers which we carried about. The temporal analysis picks up like a long-term pattern that short-term mimicry is unlikely to replicate, right? The device fingerprints gives anchor uh, uh, beyond IP layer that is hard to change. That that is hard to change, and the infrastructure which is costlier to change and replace at the earliest. So this points for the layering is that they have to defeat all of them at once. So Right, moving to the next part. That's key findings. What we got from this approach of doing research on the ghost worker. That is the one that is a scope narrowing worked well on this well on our tested data, like a 94 to 19% on the scope reduced across all these three cases, taking as synthetic anonymized data, where we were able to use the particular framework in different synthesized synthetic environment, and we did not need to do the many the change in much more the threshold part. And the second one was a AI role targeting. So in this overall case studies, like in uh, m- most of the users, most of the accounts which we observed that were part of means like in roles which are aligned to AIML, and that creates again the uh, assumption of talent shortage exploitation around AI and ML. And then the third one is infrastructure reuse, like in persistence of the in several cases the refused infrastructure left for an anchor event, like identities rotated, which is the whole thesis holding up here. And the fourth one is a cross correlation value, right? The where the correlating across this different three frameworks and getting the improved confidence of reducing the users from the high volume to the lowest volume. So that is where this key findings comes around. Moving to the future and future work around on this thread. Waiting on to the loading part of the slide. Right. Uh, sorry, sorry for the glitch. Got it. Sorry for the glitch. So where this goes next? A few directions: machine learning to tune the threshold against each environment is own baseline instead, which is org's own baseline instead of fixed numbers. Broader cross or correlation where the data can be replicated and seen more pivotally. uh, Automated HR workflow integration for a validation of the fraudulent identities, and honestly more studies on the economics behind this whole ecosystem. The bottom line: ghost worker scenario are an emerging insider risk pattern, the subset of the insider threats, to be precise. Uh, Multi-layer behavioral analysis over telemetry teams already collect can assist in prioritizing which accounts to investigate first. It's not like a magic detector here. It's way to turn an unmanaged population of huge crowd into a short high priority list where uh, we have demonstrated a controlled and anonymized scenarios with responsive account actions. So, so this is more workaround. I'm looking forward to work on this. Moving to the next slide, that is scope and methodology and limitations. So here, before I like and the take questions. This one slide I actually want to leave on the screen because it's how we should read everything I just showed you, like the data. That is a very synthetic timelines, anonymized user, the logs, and there is no real like an user data or a tenant here or identifies. The matrix scope reduction, not precision or recall. That's the ground truth. Not fully knowable for the covert fraud. So the HR confirmed cases are partial anchors, not proof at a rate of sample. On the three tested environment, result may not generalize to everyone because of as this is a the fabricated, created and tested on the fabricated environment. And the constraint part, that is which requires the comprehensive the authentication logs and sign-in logs and cloud app logs and etc, uh, which needs to be carefully tested to evade the evade the detections checks and etc. And this is where I say thank you. uh, and that's all. That's all. If you remember one line that makes that is identities rotate faster than infrastructure, but we can hunt on the anchor events. Like as we said, the infrastructure cannot be faked or falsed because of the multiple reasons. So yeah, that's all from my side on the this session on the CyberLab.
Awesome. Hey, thank you, Parth. Thank you for sharing your research with us. Um, what inspired you to get started on this research?
Uh, so this is like an I have dealt with the detections on APT groups and the new TTPs across and all, but the identity is the means insider threat is being like an uh, is there from the traditional, but now the AI have came around and the AI roles have came around and all. So now the insider threat is being very much easier for the attacker or the objective of the user or anyone who can use the AI as well to do to be the insider threat for them. So
Mm,
we just started from the user now, and moving forward we'll work around on this on the AI side as well, that how the AI can be used by the insider threat or a ghost workers for their objective.
that's
And
awesome.
add on to that, means the SIM and detections on the identity side are too much, and they becomes noisy because at the end of the day, these detections are created for the human specifically, not for the machine. So humans change from one location to different locations, join from the different network, sign in from different ISP and etc. So that creates a noise, and because of that noise, SIM creates or said, hey, this is too much noise, let's move this to the low severity or informational severity. And that is where insider threats or ghost workers take an advantage of it, and that is where whole this research came around, to hunt upon, to pinpoint that particular set of users or ghost workers.
Interesting. Where do you see your research going from here?
uh, Towards the agents being used by the ghost workers or users, or create a persistent agent even after they leave the organization, even if they get caught or something like that. So where they can come from the external side of door.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, hey, Parth, thank you so much for joining us and presenting today. Uh, hope you continued success in your research going forward, and have a great day.